All right. Okay, it is now recorded as of this
Good. We're
moment.
in.
We're in.
All right.
So, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Scott?
I'm good. It's cold and rainy here, which is really a good thing in California.
It's
Uh,
the same here. See?
well, but
Rhode
here
Island,
it's
California.
here the rain is uncommon these days. So half of
I know.
California is drying up.
But
So,
I do love your backgrounds. Wow, look at all those Cotati posters.
and it's just coincidence that I have one right next to my head that happens to have a CPEZ accordion on it. That I just noticed
Yes,
when I
yes.
set this up.
I actually have Cotati posters back here on the kind of wall of posters. So
Yeah, I am. Alex Meisner just sent me a thing wanting, not just wanting the poster, but wanting some past posters that he was included on. I was surprised he didn't
Mhm.
have it. He didn't have any of them from where he'd played in the past out in Cotati.
Ah, that's because probably we run to the booth to get posters, and the ones we want are gone. That happens a lot. You
Yeah,
always forget until the end.
yeah. Well, there's a lot we could talk about, but the main reason I wanted to do this discussion was your appearance in a major motion picture. um,
Which one would that be?
the one that adds when I well, there's one thing I about the name of that movie. It starts, weird. It is weird. It's like it was kind of
It
like
is.
um a Quentin Tarantino comedy parody.
It had a little bit of Quentin Tarantino in it, didn't it?
Yes, there was that definitely that influence. Um, and the Madonna character really, I mean, once you bring in Pablo Escobar, it's hard to get out of the area where you're doomed to have some executions. It's a
I
you,
don't know why they brought. I had never even heard of the guy actually until the movie, which is probably it's a great thing that not everybody knows who he is, since he was an awful person. But he must have something against Madonna because he destroys Madonna in the movie. And I will tell you, I spent a whole afternoon with Madonna's parents, who are from Traverse City, Michigan area. They have
really.
a winery up there. Yeah, they're total Italians. They're like old school, strict
Yeah,
Italians.
I
I
know
don't
she
know
comes
how
from.
she came out of that. Because she's the
I know.
farthest thing
Well,
from an old school strict.
I've heard her talk before though about being proud of her Italian heritage. I mean, she looks upon herself as very Italian. From what I've maybe she doesn't
She
anymore.
doesn't act it. But her parents are her parents are very similar to Lady Gaga's parents. They're just old school, down to earth Italians.
Have you met Lady
Um,
Gaga's parents also?
yeah, I had dinner with them in New York a couple of years ago at the Columbus Citizens Foundation
Oh my God.
for the Columbus Day parade. I actually got to eat with them, and they're the same. They're very down to earth. You'd never know who they were. They talk about their daughter like my parents would talk about me, or your parents would talk about you.
Right.
There'd be no difference. It's not like they're more proud or less proud. They're just exactly the same. But both of those daughters are crazy. But Weird Al must have some kind of a thing against Madonna. I mean, I've never asked him that, but because I mean, he destroys her in that movie, even though it's just a it's a fake biopic. Yeah, but I mean, the whole movie goes after her. It's kind of interesting.
Well, I mean, once again, I mean, obviously it's the parody and a comedy with some Tarantino effects. So once you throw Madonna in there and it's a comedy, it was him acting out his fantasies. So his fantasy was to make Madonna look like ruthless, um, but at the same time, maybe that's just the avenue of comedy he wanted to take. He just thought maybe it would be funnier making her that way. Maybe it could be as innocent as that. Um, I guess only Al would know, but I mean, having her as a
There are
villain.
so many moments. Well, I was just say there's so many moments through the movie where there is truth involved. Like at
I
the
know.
beginning, there's much more truth. Then as it gets later, there's less. But there are still moments later where there are moments of truth, and you have to go, wait a minute, if that's true, I don't know about this. And did this happen? Well, I don't know about that. Obviously, he wasn't assassinated. We know that he's alive. So
I actually saw.
and
I saw.
Ronald Reagan didn't have a funeral for him.
Right. I saw him interviewed on The View, and they asked him. They go, "Well, of course you didn't have a relationship with Madonna," and he laughs and he goes, "Of course not," but he goes, "But that would have been great." And they go, "Well, do you guys know each other?" And he goes, "Not really." And they go, has she watched the movie?" And he goes, "I hope so." They go, "What do you think she'd think of the movie?" He goes, "I hope she would like it." It was kind of like he didn't have any idea. He just,
I
he
know,
just,
and that's consistent with other interviews. Yeah.
so, yeah, the parts you're right about the parts that are real and as they dissolve through the movie, but you do have a connection with that one part at the beginning, the accordion salesman. I think.
Yeah. Well, actually, I personally know the guy. His name is Lee. He lives in Los Angeles. Who was the person who actually knocked on Weird Al's door before he was anyone but just a kid in his neighborhood who didn't play accordion. And he thinks that they actually went to his old house because he said the house in the movie looks strikingly similar to the house I went to knock on the door. And he also talks about how the dad was actually totally for him playing the accordion. He said the one he had to persuade was his mom. His mom was really not into the idea of Al playing the accordion. So that's twisted from the movie. And I predicted in the video I made about me being a part of the movie and going over details behind the scenes and accordion history. I talked about, well, the accordion was probably around $500 in those days, which was a ton of money. And it was a 12 bass. And Lee told me that yes, it was a 12 bass and it was $450. Which, think about that, like, wow, that's expensive for a 12 bass. But and he said he didn't quite wear a hat like in the movie, but but yeah, that of course is all true about a door-to-door salesman, as many accordionists around the country started playing because of a door-to-door salesman. Many people that watch the movie will think, oh, that's silly too, like who would ever go around knocking on doors to make your kid play accordion? No, this was very common back in the day.
Yeah, I know that. And one of the things that jumped out at me when you had mentioned to me before about the accordion being $450 was that back then they must have really been serious about him doing an accordion lesson, so they're going to shell out $450 at that time. That's a nice accordion.
Yeah, and many people I've ever talked to in the United States have always said, when I was a kid, my parents had to decide, okay, do we buy him a car when he turns 16 or do we buy him this nice new accordion? I mean, that was the choice you had to make. So I can't imagine any 16-year-olds today would choose an accordion over a car. I don't know if you'd find one single 16-year-old in the world that would do that.
Yeah, I guess the last time that would have happened would probably have been like 1951 or 52 during Contino's rage. Because at that time, it's like they're looking at Dick Contino, they're going, maybe if I have an accordion, I'll have 2,000 girls screaming at my feet at Hollywood Bowl. So,
well, that's the other funny moment when he says in the movie that the salesman says, you're going to be all the rage. You're going to have girls lined up around the corner. And you know, he really overdoes it. But the thing is, yes, maybe in 1950, 51, 52, that almost would have been true, especially that time. Obviously, the accordion was popular through the 50s into the early 60s. But when Dick and Tina was really huge in those early 50s, that might have actually been true.
Well, it was true. I mean, I've seen footage, video, not video, but pictures of him at Hollywood Bowl, where there literally is thousands of people, and all you can see in the front are all women, young women, you know, like kind of like the Beatles. It's pretty amazing.
Yep. Well, I've heard many times that Elvis actually went to war and joined the military, specifically because he saw that Dick and Tina, who was famous before Elvis, what happened to his career when he didn't go. And Elvis said, well, crap, I better go.
Yeah, and the thing with Catino is, if I remember correctly, they were going to give him probation, and the judge took that away and ordered him to jail. Uh, it was a Yeah, I'm sure that Elvis might have noticed that also.
Yeah.
So, so how was it doing this movie? Um, how did this come about? I mean, it's you didn't send a resume in. Somebody must have contacted you somehow, somewhere.
Well, it's actually a interesting story, and it relates completely back to the accordion world. So, how I got the Weird Al movie, we have to go back to the 1950s when the accordion world was so huge and so important. And there were accordion empires across the country, from Tony Dannon's modern accordion school in Detroit to Joanne Summers, who's still with us, in Kansas City. I mean, we go around all the country of all these different empires that accordion studios. There was two in Milwaukee with Casio. So if you go to Iowa, there were two there. There was Janet Haney, who conducts an accordion orchestra to this day in Los Angeles, and the other was Arlene Boddicker. And Arlene Boddicker had a couple of kids, one of them being Michael Boddicker. And Michael Boddicker grew up, like many of us accordion people, in an accordion world, but he was too much into the accordion world because he lived at the house where they had all of these lessons. So his whole childhood, he was sick of accordion. He had to learn accordion, play accordion, compete in accordion, and his mother was the head of an accordion empire. So when he got into his teens, he got sick of this and switched to piano. At that point, he left Iowa and went to Los Angeles and started getting into electronics. He's brilliant with electronics, and became the synth guy, like the synth guy of Los Angeles, and ended up working with Quincy Jones and Michael Jackson, and all the synth stuff you hear in Michael Jackson is Michael Boddicker. But of course, he never got away from his accordion roots. He still always kept up with accordion. And I got to know Michael Boddicker probably about 10 years ago or something, when I started going to LA very consistently. And Michael had me play the SCL Awards earlier this year. The SCL Awards are like the Grammys or the Oscars, but you just haven't heard of them because they're for composers and lyricists. That's what it is, the Society of Composers and Lyricists. So I performed there. And one of the other performers was Emily Bear, who won a Grammy. So it's a big deal. I wish they were more known, but I was one of the performers there. It was quite an honor I had. Michael should have the video done. With this whole band, we did Green Dolphin Street, which they were going over the music for Green Dolphin Street. So they had me do my own version of it, and then the band came in. And after, I met all these composers that were there, and there was these two young kids, and they came up to me and they said, "Look, we have a perfect film that we need you for. You are just perfect for what we're doing, but we can't tell you what it is yet." I was like, "Okay, well, here's my card. I can't wait to hear from you." A couple of months later, I go to see Weird Al in New Bedford, Massachusetts, because I know his bass player really well, Steve J's. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And he's been with Weird Al since the first year that Weird Al toured, 40 years ago. And we're talking, and I met with Al too, but I talked a lot with Steve. I said, "Steve, you mentioned this movie that's coming out. I got to be part of this movie. I got to be part of this." And he said, "Well, we already recorded the music though." And I said, "Well, that's weird, Steve. You said it's coming out in like the late fall. How would they have recorded the music? Because not everybody knows this. Composers get treated like crap in the music industry. What happens is you have a director create a movie, they get it all done, all buttoned up, all edited, and they're like, 'All right, the premiere of the movie's in 2 weeks. Oh, by the way, send it to the composer so we can write all the music.'" And this happens routinely. Well, the very last thing that happens is the music, which is hilarious to me, because when I watch a movie, what makes the scenes is the music. If you don't have the right music, you can't even envision the scene. So I don't know how a director can envision especially dramatic scenes without the music there, but that's what they do. Then they give it to the composer. So I told Steve, I said, "Steve, I don't know if they would have already done the music." He's like, "Well, we already recorded ours." Huh, that's interesting. So I thought, well, crap, I'm done. I'm not in the Weird Al movie. I would have loved to have been in that. This was killing me. A couple of weeks later, I get a call from those two kids, and they said, "Okay, Cory, remember that we did that project? Okay, we can tell you what it is now. it's the Weird Al movie. And I immediately called Steve. I said, Steve, I tell you the music. I said, I told you, Steve, the music hadn't been done. What happened is they had recorded all of their parts for the movie. So he thought that it was done, but they recorded Weird Al's music, not the score, the actual score and the theme and the music you'll hear in the movie. That's totally different from Weird Al's music. And the reason they recorded the music, funny side note, is because they were going to use the old recordings of Weird Al, but the publishing company that owns the rights to the music, not the actual tunes, he can play them all he wants and record them all he wants, but the actual rights to those recordings, was going to charge too much money to the movie. So Al said, screw it, we'll just re-record all the music. So the recordings you hear of Weird Al's music in the movie are recordings from 2022. They're not the original recordings. They're fresh, brand new recordings.
Oh.
So that's why he said, well, we already recorded the music. No, you recorded Al's music. So everything else you hear in the movie that's not Weird Al playing, like the clarinet polka in the basement, that's Weird Al playing. When you see Daniel Radcliffe playing, that's Weird Al playing. Anything else that's accordion in there, and the score throughout the movie, when the movie starts, the polkas played at the polka party, that's all me.
Interesting. So when you see Daniel Radcliffe playing, that's Weird Al playing that music?
That's Weird Al.
They did that really well.
Well, Daniel Radcliffe learned accordion enough so that he could fake the fingering really well. Because there's a couple, especially the clarinet polka, like it looks real. It looks really real.
I know. When I was watching the movie,
he learned it enough to fake it.
Yeah, when I was watching the movie, I was trying to figure out what he could have been playing himself, and they actually did that pretty good because they had me fooled a little. Interesting.
Yep. And all the accordions in the movie were donated by, I guess I bought them off Dave. Dave's Accordions in L.A., who's been the main guy in L.A. for years and years. And yes, sadly, the accordion that was destroyed by his dad in the movie. But they bought all those accordions from Dave's Accordion. So
that's interesting too. Dave's Accordion. It's and that's in Los Angeles.
Yeah. He used to have a shop in Glendale for years, but now he moved it to his home. Just like Charlie Nunzio and Gennady in New Jersey and every other accordion dealer, Lillian and Alex, New Jersey. So many people have it at their home, and now Dave's Accordion does the same. He just has a whole chunk of his house filled to the ceiling with accordions. Because after the pandemic, he's like, well, people are just going to come here anyway. Why even have the shop?
So the Petosas are really advanced to have it in a separate building, other than their home.
That's actually quite advanced. Yeah, and they expanded Petosa a couple of years ago. You know, they bought the new building with the same doors. They kept the original doors on Petosa, but yeah, it's weird for them to actually have their own building for that.
So how's this segues into you getting the job? That now that because they couldn't use the old music. And now they're re-recording, which meant that they could just start using your music. Is that correct?
Well, no, that's for the actual Weird Al songs. I'm saying that they had to re-record. But the score of the film, the composers were writing, in June, July or so, and that's when they had called me. And I went to L.A. and recorded all. What's really cool is that in the fight scene, they really let me kind of improvise. And they said, don't have a tonal center. They said, just kind of improvise. And I'm thinking, okay, like Stravinsky, like Messiaen. Just don't have a tonal center and do all kinds of crazy playing. And they actually rewrote different parts of that fight scene to go along with whatever improvisation, because I gave them a bunch of improvisations while I was there. And then they fixed things around, cut them up, put them together, and then created what they wanted and put other parts to it. So the fight scene is more of really me. Where other parts, I'm just playing what he wanted me to play. There was no music. He recognized that I could just listen and kind of regurgitate quickly. So he would just play me the scene and play me the music, and I would just learn it on the spot. And we recorded it. And there's actually a clip on a couple of Instagram. Zach Robinson is the composer. And he actually has video of the actual takes because he was recording. And when I luckily was doing a lot of these in one take. So you actually can see the take in video that's in the movie of different things, including the fight scene. There's one part of it I think he grabbed. So we just had a ball. We just sat in his room with his massive computer, with all his mixing board and everything, and he would just play me a scene. So I got to see part of the movie, of course, well before it came out, because I had to see what I was going to play. And I realized then this is a wacky movie.
Wait, so when you're talking about being in the studio, and you said that he was playing parts of the screens, you're talking about Al. You're talking about Al.
No, Zach. I'm talking about Zach Robinson, the composer.
Zach Robinson. Okay, yeah, that I was confused there because wasn't making any sense. And did you have any history with Zach Robinson, or this is just all on the spot?
Just in meeting him at the SEL Awards, when him and Leo, the other composer with him, said, "We have a project for you, but we can't tell you what it is, and we need you." That was the only time I had met them.
Now I want to go back and rewatch it just for the fight scenes, to listen to you, knowing that
it's just before he goes to Columbia.
Okay, knowing that it's improv, now I had to hear that. I mean, you doing improv is like the most natural thing in the world, but I don't think most people watching that movie wouldn't realize that.
No, which is funny because I mean I just played with the Boston Symphony last weekend, and technically it was way easier than most gigs I've played, but it was extremely difficult because all the other skill sets of having to actually read exactly what you're supposed to play in the music, no improvisation, and you have to follow the conductor. And of course, a conductor in classical music is well ahead of where the beat is, which for me is alien. That the conductor is going to be well ahead of where what I'm hearing is. So it's totally different skill sets, in playing with an orchestra and saying, "Here, improvise this fight scene." It's just completely different worlds, but I try to do everything. It's all part of the music, being a professional musician.
Right. So you probably never even visited the set.
No. This because again, the movie had wrapped up before they even gave it to
before you even came on the scene. Yeah. So that's interesting. So what's this leading to your next movie? What kind of context?
It certainly helped my IMBD page. So.
Well, that's good. That's good. It's stories you can tell Madonna's parents and Lady Gaga's parents next time you see them.
Exactly.
So I have a couple of offshoot questions. One, it's like I know about your history at the White House, but what jumped out at me was the first time you played there, you were 12. What were your feelings about going to the White House and playing at 12 years old?
Well, and from what I know, I'm still the youngest person to ever play a state dinner. They just had the state dinner, and John Baptiste played. I'm like, "Hey, John, I was there at 12 playing. You're there at 35 or something." Obviously, the answer to that question, Scott, is I wasn't nervous because I didn't know the gravity of the White House. I understood the gravity of the presidency, that's for sure. But I didn't understand the gravity of playing for the president at the White House. And then the other times I played, especially the state dinner, the idea of playing. Tony Curtis was there. Martha Stewart was there. Eli Wiesel was there. I mean, all these giants of culture, but I didn't know. I knew Bill and Hillary, but I didn't know anything else. So my parents were far more nervous because they understood the gravity of the situation.
Right.
Although my dad is like, from the old Italian kind of vibe. So he's like, he even slapped Bill Clinton, an Italian slap. So that's a whole other story. But I wasn't that nervous. I mean, I didn't screw up. I played well. And we actually have video and of course pictures from that. But when you're 12, you can only grasp so much.
Right. Well,
actually, it was 11 and 12. 11 and 12 because I played there 4 different times. They kept having me come back.
The pomp and circumstance probably didn't faze you. I mean, pomp and circumstance might have been a little more awesome to your parents. I can see that. Well, that's
the annoying aspect of going through security and them having to open one of the times they actually opened the accordion up.
oh,
But
really?
sometimes security wasn't actually all that much. So.
That could actually create a problem opening the accordion up if you didn't have somebody professionally adept at putting the accordion back together.
I know.
So, and then the other thing was I was always curious with Mario Andretti.
Yes.
Has he ever let you drive one of his cars?
Well, that's a whole other thing. I mean, I know professional race car drivers that have never gotten into an Indy car or a Formula One car. So that's a whole other world. Because to be let into one of those cars, there's so much that has to happen.
Yeah.
So sit in one, yes, sit in one, not drive one. Honestly, I would.
You could sit in one, but not with the motor running.
Right. He's lucky that he's allowed. I mean, he's the only older driver there is that actually has that consistent job of the two-seater program. And really, he says it keeps him alive because to be able to drive that car, he has to stay fit. And that's what keeps him in such great health because that motivates him. As he said, if I can't at least drive the two-seater, which does at least feel somewhat like a real race car, I have no reason to live.
Well, I don't know if this is okay, just deviating from the movie a little.
It's your audience. I'll go anywhere with the conversation.
And I just saw I had 10 more minutes on this session of the video, which I didn't know we had a time limit. But I wanted to know on the Jimmy Fallon show, is that rigged? Or can you say that?
Scott, if it's on television, let me tell you, if it's on television, whether we're talking politics and politicians or famous people on TV shows, if it's on television, it's probably rigged.
What about Jeopardy?
Okay, you know, that's
Jeopardy, that would break people's hearts to think that's rigged.
Yeah, no, that I mean, the game shows with normal people sometimes are rigged because they want certain people to win to push a certain narrative. That definitely happens. But no, Jeopardy is as it is because you couldn't fake that. But no, any of these shows with famous people. The thing is, now I just did the British version a month ago. I went back to LA and I filmed the British version of that show. They wanted me again, and I will tell you, the British do things a lot different than the Americans. They want insanity and they want things unscripted. They want to make fun of people. It's amazing that the Americans, right? The point of America was to be free, and the British were too strict. And somehow that has now been reversed, where everything on television in America is so strict, and because they don't want Kate Hudson to look bad. They don't want Ariana Grande to look stupid. They don't want Taylor Swift they don't want her to realize that she doesn't know anything about music. God forbid. No, they don't want that. So everything is practiced, rehearsed, and preset.
You should
the British version. I mean, they didn't know a lot of stuff. I can't wait to see this because they had me play all kinds of stuff we didn't prepare. They trusted that I would be on stage and that anything they said I could make it up. It was so fun, and crazy things happened. The famous people looked stupid at times, and they said, we love that. And also, they were very nice. They came backstage. We met all of them. With the Jimmy Fallon show, I never actually even met Jimmy. The closest I got to him was what you see on TV. So, yeah, most everything you see on TV,
you should,
even when it's supposed to be real, especially the reality TV shows. Are you kidding? Those are all scripted.
But we should tell the audience. I don't think we actually told them the official name of both shows that we're talking about.
That's my jam. That's my jam.
And is it called the same thing in England? In Britain, is it the same title?
Yeah.
And how did you come about? What was your pipeline into that show?
That one was just a connection just someone I knew that was an agent out there that's a big fan of mine. And as soon as they said, we need weird instruments to play popular music, he's like, I got it. So actually, this is the sad thing. Once again, anybody that says, oh, the accordion's coming back, it's being cooler again, I don't see an ounce of that. The only reason I got that show is because the show dictated we want weird and strange instruments to play popular music. That's the only reason I got it. They didn't say, oh, I got a great idea. The accordion is cool. Let's have an accordionist. No, they said we need weird and strange instruments. And when the agent said, I have an accordionist, they said, perfect. So the idea, maybe in everyday people culture, accordion's getting cooler, sure. But I keep saying in every interview across the world, at the top of the entertainment industry, the people that run the world, the people that run the industry, they still think the accordion is a joke. That has not changed.
Well,
and there was perfect proof of it. That's the only reason I got the gig.
I think it's one thing. It's like my observation of the accordion world for the last 20 years. It's like it's kind of for every 2 steps forward is 1 step back. It's kind of like I see more indie millennial people picking up the accordion, but at the same time, like you will see, Gary Larson's with a new joke. It's kind of like there's I don't know if you're aware of it, but Gary Larson obviously loves doing the accordion jokes. He actually wrote an apology to Petosa.
Yes.
So for every
Petosa has the original drawing of "Welcome to Heaven, Here's Your Harp, Welcome to Hell, Here's Your Accordion," and with apologies. But the thing is, like, even recently, Stephen Colbert was interviewing this famous actress, and she said, "I used to play accordion when I was a kid," and he goes, "I'm sure you had lots of guys after you for that." So Colbert made fun of it. Steve Harvey famously. I couldn't believe this one. This one was either earlier this year or last year. He had someone on one of his shows, and the girl says, "Oh, when I was, I want to date a guy that plays accordion." And Steve just destroyed her. Like, and this is today. This is not 20 years ago. So it's still okay to make fun of the accordion.
He's never been to New Orleans. That's kind of weird.
I know, it's like I wanted to jump through the television and say, Steve, have you ever heard of C.J. Chenier and his dad Clifton? Like,
really? I mean, icons in New
Orleans. That's the thing that you're always fighting.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what.
But this is actually a great tie-in to go back to the Weird Al movie, though, Scott, because the thing is, the Weird Al movie is a huge moment for the accordion, because I thought, well, this is the biggest movie in 60 years to promote the accordion, because it is a positive film for accordion. It definitely is a positive. It promotes it. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Even back then in the 40s and 50s, where was there a movie pushing the accordion? Maybe accordion was seen, like in the last scene of It's a Wonderful Life. You see the accordion player playing Hark the Herald Angels Sing. You see that. But it's not promoting. It's just there. Yeah. This movie promotes it as a cool instrument. So I don't think there's ever been a film in the history of humanity that has promoted the instrument even close to as much as this Weird Al film. So maybe this is the breaking point where now producers of TV and entertainment will be like, well, no, accordion's kind of cool. Look, it was in that Weird Al thing. So I think this is a big flashpoint for accordion history that Weird Al just did for all of us.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's I like that take. We're gonna run with your take on that. I think, and I have more. I have more questions I want to ask about the movie, and I do have other questions I want to ask you, like, let's make a deal, kind of things like that. But how about if we do another session at a later date? Because I see the time is coming up.
Okay, no, we have lots of stuff we can go over, Scott. Don't worry.
All right. Well, it's great having you. I really appreciate you doing this, and we're going to be talking really soon again. So
thank you.
Take care.
Go Cotati.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. We've yet to talk about that. We'll be talking about. I kind of wanted to get your take on what you feel about that little festival out there, but we'll do that in the next session.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Take care.
You do.
See you later.